Good evening. We welcome you to In the Blender with Brandon and Madeline Hyman. And I tell you guys, we have again our special guest, Dr. Yolanda Lewis Ragland. And I'm telling you guys, if you missed the last episode we had with her, missed the treat. So we want you guys to go to our In the Blender Facebook page, our YouTube page. What other pages they can go to, sweetheart?
Our individual pages or Dr. Yolanda's page.
Yeah, I shared it.
And you can view that episode. I'm telling you, some phenomenal information on mental health. This is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I'm telling you guys, we're so excited to participate in the education and the spreading of this good news and how we can be better in our lives. And so we're just so thankful and so happy to have her on with us. She needs no introduction. She's world renowned.
Look, from your lips, right?
There we go. And so, listen, you guys are gonna love. We're gonna do a little recap of the last episode, and then we're gonna jump into our last couple of questions of discussion with Dr. Ragland. I'm telling you guys, listen, if you are someone that has dealt with mental health issues, or you're dealing with it, or you know someone that's dealing with it, you want to contact them right now. There's some information that she's going to share that's just going to be vital to your success in this area. It's going to give you some insight, some clarity, some understanding. And I'm telling you guys, you're going to be so excited and happy that you tuned in tonight. And so, Dr. Yolanda, tell us a little bit about yourself before we go
on. Okay, quick recap. I am a pediatrician. I'm actually board certified in pediatrics and bariatrics. So I am a pediatrician for Children's National Medical Center. I also do, I started off with child and adolescent obesity, but I actually do bariatrics, which is weight loss, which is the medical management of weight loss. A lot of people hear bariatric and they think bariatric surgery. And so bariatric surgeons are those who do the surgical management of weight loss, but I do the medical management, meaning diet, exercise supplements, B12, different vitamins and things that will increase metabolism. But in working at Children's, I work with populations from 0 to 22, pretty much, and with all kinds of issues, whether it's primary care, whether it's mental health, whether it's, physical concerns. And I kind of explained last time that one of the reasons I got into weight loss and weight management is because it actually is very much tied into sort of addiction behaviors, addictive behaviors. And so that's really along the lines of mental health. And so many times when I actually talk with patients about weight loss and weight management, we kind of have to get to the root of the issue, which sometimes is eating for comfort, eating for reasons, whether it's abandonment. There's all kinds of stuff that people are sort of, sometimes they're self-medicating. Some people self-medicate with drugs and alcohol, others self-medicate with food. And so I got into mental health through weight loss, as well as our typical things that we talked about: depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, some of the ODD, which is oppositional defiance, bipolar. There's a lot of things that we can talk about. And especially for our young people, ADHD is one of the big ones that I work with for pediatrics. So that's a little bit about me. I've been doing what I do for almost 20 years. Yeah, my youngest is 15 now, but my oldest is 20. So yeah, I've been doing this for about 20 years.
Okay. And one of the reasons why I wanted you on, because you've assisted me over the years in the bariatric aspect of this. And a lot of people have heard my story, some of my story, and that part of my life was a struggle my entire life.
Right.
The different issues I had growing up. A lot of people know that even at birth, I was classified crippled. And so for me, food was comforting in that area. And then it just extended on to all the other different areas of my life. And so mentally, that was my go-to. And so, and when I was introduced to you, it was like, okay, here's somebody that can assist me in dealing with this in another way. And so, because of the great success that I've had with your introduction in life, I figured I might as well share that with the world and see how many other people we can get on to have a success.
Right, absolutely.
Especially during this time with this lockdown, so many people. I train personally. I do a lot of work over the internet with the Zoom classes, and I'm dealing with clients that are struggling right now because of that. And all of it's mental. It's not the physical aspect, it's the mental. And so I'm always looking for ways to increase and to sharpen myself so that I can also increase and sharpen those that I've had the pleasure to work alongside of. And so it's just an honor for me to have you on. We're going to let you talk about some of the things you've already talked about how they can reach you if they want to be a part of your connection to benefit their lives, just as it's benefited me. And so, yeah, I'm excited. And so the last time we had you on, we talked a little bit about mental health assessments. We talked a little bit about the various communities and how mental health is addressed. We talked a little bit about children and young adults as far as the mental health aspect goes. And then we talked about mental illnesses, stages, things of that nature. And so I don't know if you want to kind of go back over that.
I give a little, I feel like maybe a little recap for either anybody who is just joining in or maybe who was on last time who may not have taken notes. I'm not a big note taker if I don't know what someone's going to talk about. And then later on, I wish I had taken notes. But we talked about in terms of first, I think the 5 stages, that the things to sort of know when there is, some things are normal, right? Some emotions that we have, like sadness. Sadness is normal. We have, someone passes. Here we are in COVID, right? We're finding out lots of people that we know are either falling ill or succumbing to the illness and dying. If they're not directly related to us, they're family members of someone that we know. And so it's causing a lot of grief and really sort of this reality that life is, you all of a sudden you feel like you're vulnerable, right? You're not as invincible as you thought. I want to end with some ways to sort of protect yourself in this time so that we're not fearful. So that is what I'm going to end on. But that being said, some of these things will cause some sadness. So sadness is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a normal emotion. As children and adults, we're going to have losses, and a regular response to a loss is grief, just normal grief. Normal grief lasts somewhere between a week for some people, up to maybe 6 months or so. And when we say 6 months, we don't mean you're consistently in that grief state. We mean that within that 6 months, things are going to remind you of a person or a thing, or you're going to be reminded of your loss. And so you may feel sad at that moment, but there are times when you can come out of that sadness. Things will make you feel better, whether it's friends, connections with friends, talking to your children. There are times when you're not going to feel sad all the time. So that's sort of a normal grief reaction. But when there's a really long lasting sadness that causes you to really sort of change your behavior, meaning you may isolate yourself. You may find yourself sleeping because you just don't want to be awake, or you just can't stay awake. You may find yourself, again, some people, they get so sad and they're comforting themselves with food. But this kind of a sadness that you kind of can't come out of, if it lasts more than 6 months or longer, that's when we go into what we would define as depression. And so depression itself comes with a lot of signs and symptoms, that really dark and deep sadness, the inability to sometimes not sleep, and for some people sleeping too much, that overeating, or some people have no need or feeling or desire to eat at all. So that's also a part of depression. So there's all of these things that we sort of look for. That's an abnormal, prolonged reaction to even a sad event it could be triggered by just a sad grief event. But if you stay there too long and you're unable to come out of it, we will then define that as depression. And again, that's at about 6 months or greater. Then there's these extreme highs and lows. You have people that that, I mean, they're just always the life of the party, and they just have really great time. And it's like this energy that, I mean, over the top. But that's how they are all the time, or that's how they are. And then the next minute, they're just way low. Like I mean, like you were like, is this the same person I was just talking to? So sometimes those types of people that have these extreme highs and lows, we might be concerned about bipolar, which is the high is what we call a mania or a manic episode, and then the low again is depression, right? So they're manic depressive, or what we call bipolar. They're on the opposite ends of the spectrum within a very short time, and almost with no precipitating event. It's just, and so they can't control it, right? And so it's very difficult because they don't know how to control it, and they're always angry or upset about something, and that they can't understand why. Or the times that they're manic, they're really kind of also out of control, where they're like shopping a lot or doing things that are might be a little bit dangerous, just so that this adrenaline rush. And so we always want to be pay attention to that. So that's your highs and lows. That's manic depression or bipolar. Then you have your people who have an excessive fear or worry sort of about any and everything. COVID has got us all scared, right? We should all understand that this thing is bigger than us. So we need to know how to take care of ourselves. You want to make sure you're sanitizing, your proper protection, and just sort of the normal everyday things. But you have some people who this has triggered an anxiety in them, right? And anxiety is a person, or an anxious person, or someone with anxiety is someone who that worry or that fear is very difficult to ease in them, no matter what your facts are. No matter how many times I, do an exam on them and show them that their blood pressure is normal, or that their heart isn't beating out of their chest, it feels like it with anxiety. They feel like they're dying. They can't breathe. They can't, so you have these symptoms sometimes of shortness of breath, of your heart pounding, and you think your heart is beating so fast that it feels like it's coming out of your chest. I can show you right in front of you, your blood pressure is normal. I can show you that your pulse is normal, but that's not how you feel. And so it's a very emotional situation where we call that anxiety, and again, it can be triggered by something. And I say that very candidly, because again, with COVID happening, I think there are some things that are being unmasked in some people with depression, with the social distancing. It's kind of causing some isolation for some people, and even some depression, because they're not able to connect the way they're used to.
Let me ask you this question on that note, because we are ministers of the gospel, and so Scripture says things like, "Be of good cheer, be encouraged." Talks about even David having even.
I was gonna say, well, the Scripture says be encouraged, but it also says David encouraged.
Exactly, and that's where I was.
So this is a time to understand, which is why I said that's sort of something I want to end on. Or what are the active ways that you can counter some of these feelings that may be real feelings, but you have to know it's a renewing of your mind. It's an understanding that, you know, God has us. And if we really do understand that, recognize that doesn't mean go out into a field of people that you know are infected and and assume that God is going to keep you from this infection. That's not wisdom, right? Wisdom is still do the precautions that we're talking about, but understand that you don't have to live in fear. We don't need to live there. That's not God did not make us. He didn't give us a spirit of fear, but, you know, power and, you know, a sound mind. So we have the ability to get through this power, might, and a sound mind. So the whole point is just knowing what to know, applying what you know, and then being faithful and understanding that God is also faithful in doing what he says he will do. That's what we as Christians are supposed to do in this time. So that's why really this is just about giving information. But again, like you said, you are to encourage yourself. That is something that we as Christians, and that's why being connected, staying connected, following, you know, being in a ministry where your leaders have you in, you know, I run an I Connect group on Wednesday mornings. It's actually called the 120 Club. I facilitate that group. And this is a time more than ever that we need to be connected with like-minded individuals, be connected with believers and Christians, people who are staying active and exercising, people who know how to keep you from eating and overeating and all these things. You have to have these connections, because if you're at home trying to figure this out on your own and this isn't what you're trained in, then you do feel isolated and you feel ill-equipped. And you probably are. But if you're connected to someone who has your answer, that's what our ministry is about. You know, we are supposed to be, we have the answers for the world. And so each one of us has each other's answer within us. And so that's why we have to stay connected. So you're perfectly right about being encouraged and encouraging
And
yourself.
that's why I wanted to bring out those points, because even like once this pandemic really hit and life as we knew it began to change and begin to alter.
Yeah.
One of the things that Madeline and I decided was we were going to keep some sorts of normalcy or normality in our lives. And with that, because we both coach and train, we wanted to make sure that we kept those times. And so for me, I'm still up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm still training at 3:30. The reason being is because when you begin to let every area of your life succumb to this, then now you're dealing with all of those emotions and issues that come along with drastic changes that you have no control over. Although I may not be able to go to the gym, guess what? I can go in my basement. I can do my garage. You know, I can still work out. I can still do those things that the world don't have control over to keep me in a box from doing what I normally do. And so, you know.
And it's extremely healthy. One of the things that we talk about, that is actually one of our practical tips. One of the things we talk about is keeping your routine. A lot of people are rolling out of bed, just they have telework. They're just rolling out of bed. They're not getting up. They're not, jumping in the shower and getting dressed. And so they're not really starting their day. And so they just sort of are being, they're sort of just tolerating this time and instead of embracing this time. And like I said, I'm going to get into some tips, but that's one of them. But really understanding that, as far as I believe, I'm a believer. So I don't think anything happens by accident. And I truly believe that we've been slowed down for a reason. And the question is, what are you going to do with this time? Have you slowed down and done something productive with that? Or are you letting this time control you? Are you controlling this time, or is this time controlling you? And I think that because of who we are, we have the power, the ability, and the wisdom to control this time and not let this time control us. So exactly what you're talking about is what we've been recommending to parents and children, making sure that you continue a routine or create, even if you have to create a new routine that fits this time, it's your new normal, but you have to have a routine. You can't just allow yourself to kind of get up and do whatever and not expect, because children, we're finding parents are calling, I'm doing telemedicine now, so I'm doing these visits on calls, and parents are having a hard time putting children to sleep at night. Especially our teens and things are staying up all hours, because now what do they have? They have unlimited access to the internet. They have unlimited access to social media. They're on it all day long. At least they had a break in the day when they had their school hours. Well, now school's online. They're in these Zoom calls. They got to get online for this, that, and the other. So next thing you know, these kids are online all day, and parents are complaining that these kids are being affected by this. And much of it is because there wasn't an understanding and determination to continue to keep a schedule that was very similar to what you had before, so that you can keep some normalcy, just like you're saying. So no, you're right on target. That's definitely what we've been telling parents and their kids. So I have two left that we were talking about that are normal reactions to things that happen in the world or happen to us, but you're happening for an abnormal amount of time, then it gets a diagnosis, right? So the other one is isolation or withdrawal. You might find that something's happened, someone's embarrassed you, you broke up and got out of a bad relationship, and so you need time to yourself, right? You need time to sort of heal and mend and take time. And so that's a normal reaction to having some traumatic experience. But abnormal isolation or withdrawal from family and from friends, from the activities that you are used to doing. If you're somebody who was working out, if you're somebody who just was, there's certain activities that you found comfort or delight in, and now you find no comfort or delight. You have no desire. And again, and this is greater than 6 months, and it's called adhonia, but that's just a big word for not really feeling like that anything excites you. But that particular isolation and withdrawal, that's also a sign of depression. Not really wanting to talk to anyone, not wanting to associate with anyone. And what it also does is it allows you to not let anybody get you out of your funk, because you want to stay in your funk. So sometimes people are purposefully staying there and not allowing people to help them out of it. But that's a nice. And then the last one is again, I was talking about a change in behavior, a change in pattern of your eating. So whether and again, that's connected to depression, but it has to do with either you're overeating, binging, trying to comfort or console or feed some need or some desire that you don't really recognize that you have, or you've got to the point where you just don't eat anything, you eat very little, you just have no desire to eat. A lot of times that's also connected to depression. So those changes of eating, changes of sleep habits, isolation or withdrawal, or just that really, really deep sadness, those are actually all a part of depression. And I say depression because that's one of the main mental health issues that we deal with, especially in our communities. And sometimes we don't realize that we're dealing with it. And a lot of people are self-medicating with things like alcohol, marijuana, things that you're finding people are self-medicating with. A lot of times what they're self-medicating is depression. Now, we can talk a lot about some of the problems in our community that would lend itself to depression. You have poverty, and you have unemployment, and you have domestic violence. There's all kinds of stuff that there are a lot of reasons for it, but the point is depression is this thing that we don't really sometimes talk about. It's in our families, it's in our the aunt and uncle that nobody ever really talks to, or doesn't talk to anybody who comes to may or may not ever show up at an event. You have to drop the plate off and keep going because they're not going to come out. And, people are really kind of, they're enabling some folks, and they don't even realize that this is somebody who probably needs to see somebody and needs to have some intervention if possible. But a lot of us are masking depression and with all kinds of things like addictive behaviors, and we just don't talk about it.
Let me ask you this question. So What do you think about change? Right now, we're in a season of change. We're in a time of change, and I think that for the most part, a lot of us have been raised and taught that change is bad. And because of that mindset, when you look at something like what we're dealing with right now, that depression is easily to come upon a person because change is bad. Instead of looking at the creative nature of who we are and how we can capitalize on that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I mean, absolutely. So it really is. It really goes back to, like you said, what people are taught, right? What people are brought up in, what tradition or what mindsets are sort of held on into a family. The problem is the only thing that's constant is change. That's the only thing that we actually can ever depend on is change. You're always going to be changing. So any household, any situation that doesn't prepare you for change is actually obviously not preparing you for life. And so, just as you said, if we one of the best things we can do for ourselves, for our children, for our communities, is really embrace change, and really sort of strategize for how change, when it comes, how you capitalize on it, what opportunity. Every opportunity really comes about because of the change. We have all of these folks on Zoom and Zoom meetings that have never touched Zoom a day in their life. So Zoom had to be the thing that you had to now embrace, because you have to start, you still have to do your meetings, you still have to connect with people. So all of these things that we're doing that are different are really just opportunities to grow. And that's the problem. Change, it's funny because we gotta call it what it is. Change and growth are often
Yes.
painful. You're not going to experience growth if you actually don't experience the pain of the growth. So, if you look at a seed, you put it in the ground and you plant, the soil, it has to, when the plant comes out, it's breaking out of this seed, it's germinating. And that's not this cute little, package process. It's actually pretty violent because it has to break out of the seed in order to grow. And often we are afraid of that discomfort. We're afraid of what comes with change, which is sometimes the pain of, first of all, recognizing that what we were doing, we're not going to be able to do anymore. So that comfort of that is gone. And sometimes that means people. Sometimes that means, situations. That might mean a job that I've had for 20 years that I got real comfortable and I was real good at it. But this time has actually introduced something that shows me, wow, I got to be prepared that if anything like this happens again, or the fact is, we don't even have to only say if this happens again. We're not going to go back to
Yes.
what it was. Normal is not good. So I really need people to be prepared and start getting themselves ready for a new normal. We are not returning to what it was before. There is no returning to what it was. There are going to be differences and all kinds of stuff that this has actually exposed and and shown us. And so the object is to see everything that has gone on and figure out how to change with it, how to grow with it, how to create opportunities for yourself. But yeah, you're right. There are a lot of families and situations where they think of change as bad, and we got to help people recognize change isn't bad. It's growth. But growth is often, again, uncomfortable and painful even. Any boy who's had a growth spurt over the
Yes.
summer can tell you, and some girls too, as athletes, and you get these growing pains in your knees, and there's nothing we can do about it. After a while, when the growth, period stops, that pain sort of subsides, but now you're a different, per you're 4 inches or 5 inches taller. Now you can do more stuff, and you're feeling, you're a little bit more, so you can reach some things you couldn't before. All of these things are positive, but they're not pleasant. They're often uncomfortable or even painful. And we just have to be better at preparing our families, our children, our communities, for that type of growth.
And I like that analogy you use, because I think a lot of times we refuse to embrace the change. Like you said, when a child has that growth spurt, there's a lot of great athletes that play basketball that were in the 10th grade and they were 6 feet. And by the time they were in the 12th grade, they were 6'9", 6'10". Well, their joints and, like you said, their knees and certain parts of their bodies ached, but it increased them. It allowed them to do something other than what they were doing normally as a guard. And now they had the same skills as a guard, but they were power forwards, or they were centers, or they, different positions they were able to embrace. And I thought about a couple of years ago, back in about 2015, the company that I worked for got bought out. So, most times when companies get bought out, guess what? They let some people go. And so for me, it was a little daunting. It was a little scary, because it was like, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to wait around for them to give me a slip, or am I going to take my own destiny in my hands and, take control of my own life? And so, against what most people would consider better judgment, I took it upon myself. I said, if it's going to be, it's up to me. And I did that because I would rather have been in control of my destiny than to let a situation control my destiny. And so I share that because I think in this time, a lot of us can take control. Take control. If we look at various ways where we can overcome, let those creative juices begin to flow. A lot of ideas. I mean, because you talk to people all day long. There are some creative people that you're talking to that are dealing with issues because they're what's the word I want to look for? They're suppressing their creativity. And so because there's so much creativity that wants to come out of them that they don't know how to release or how to let go, now they're dealing with all these other things. What do you think about that?
No, I believe that that's true. I think often, well, first of all, so one of the things you were getting to that I often say is necessity is the author of invention. Anytime we need something, I mean, people are coming up with folks that have not done masks, but they've sewn something else, right? Now they are selling, these masks, and they're coming up with all kinds of designs and different ways. And this is just, people need them. I have an ability. I see the opportunity for this in this changed season. Let me do. And, you have other people who probably thought about it. They could probably sew. They probably even have a sewing machine, but they sat right there and didn't, take this opportunity, take this time. But I do believe that there are times when certain things that are inside of us trying to come out, when we don't know how to tap into them. There are times when I do believe that they might manifest themselves in other ways, whether it's a physical illness or whether it's, depression or whatever it is that comes out. I think that part of the reason, connecting with people is so important is that very thing, is tapping into what is it that you like? What is your passion? You may have a passion, but you have no idea how to begin a process. Somebody else knows how to start something, but they don't have anything that they can do well. So, they probably need to connect with someone who has an ability to do something but doesn't know how to start. So the truth of the matter is, when it gets down to it, I really think this is telling us that we need each other and we need to be connected, and we need to share these ideas and understand that that's what this whole thing is about. That's, I think, really why I think we were created. We all know that that we bless each other. Blessings don't drop out of the sky. It never has. Not since God created the heavens and the earth in Genesis. After that, everything that you needed was right here in the earth. It's always been that way. So when we are blessed, it's never because it dropped out of the sky. It's because another person was the vehicle to get that to us. but that means you got to open your mouth and tell people what you're trying to do, or try to connect with people. You got to network. You got to have conversations. You got to share your ideas. And like you said, if you're bottling all that up inside of you, it's possible that it can cause, all kinds of morbidities that you just don't recognize or connect it to what you're suppressing. So again, I'm always going to go back to connecting, connecting with others, connecting with families, connecting with people who have your best interests, finding people who have your best interests, just finding a group, finding out what that looks like. So many people don't even know who their tribe is yet. You got to find out what are the people who want what I want look like? Where are they? Where do they spend their time? What are they doing? How do I get involved? And now with the way we're being connected on social media more and more and more these days, you almost don't have a reason to be isolated. We're all connecting. There's a Facebook group for everything. Anything that you can think of, any subject you can think of, there's a Facebook group for that. So I think that people should challenge themselves to really find out, especially in the season, what is it that you are looking to do differently in the next 6 months to a year, and how can you connect with somebody to get some information about that, and then go from there. But I do believe that suppressing your creativity and your ideas and the things that you really want can definitely lead to some illnesses that we sometimes don't recognize until it's too late.
I love the way, even sometimes when I jump in there and I kind of toss you the ball, and I love the way you're addressing it, because I don't want our viewing audience or our listening audience to think that issues are just one way. You know what I'm saying? There are so many different reasons or avenues or roads that have led people to where they are. And if we can kind of touch on various ones, you can kind of find yourself somewhere in that definition. And the power to define is the power to fulfill. And so once you begin to get an understanding of why am I here, or how did I get here, now you can see where do I need to go to get from here.
Yeah. I mean, in medicine, the whole point is sort of what you're pointing to is, I don't know what to do until I can diagnose it. I got to call it something. I got to find out what the issue, so sometimes that takes on an avenue of whether I just sit and talk to a person and get a history, like a deep dive into their history and what's gone on and what are some of the things, or I might have to get some lab tests and see what that, what your blood work looks like. But there's all of these things that I have to do first. We were talking last time about mental health assessments. Why do a mental health assessment? You have to do a mental health assessment to even figure out what it is I'm dealing with. What are some things that happened in someone's childhood? We talked last time again. I talked about, for instance, ACEs, right? Adverse childhood experiences, and that there's so many adverse childhood experiences that not only lead to some mental health illnesses, but they actually lead to some physical health issues, right? And so there are things that have happened to people in their childhood because it was never really diagnosed, it was never really teased out, it was never really identified. It had manifestations in their teens and their adult lives that no one ever realized, look, this is why this person does this, or this is why this person has this, that, or the other. There are several, and we can get into it, or somebody can look it up. But the point is, you have to do an assessment first. You have to diagnose, and then once we diagnose something, and in medicine, we come up with what we call as a differential diagnosis, right? So you say abdominal pain,
yes,
that could be anything. First of all, abdominal pain in a man versus abdominal pain in a woman, right? There's going to be two different things, or two sets of lists that I'm going to look at, because this man doesn't have a uterus and the woman has a uterus. So now, there's all of these things that a man can have that a woman can have, but there are things that a woman can have that a man can't. So I got to differentiate, what are some of the things. So this differential diagnosis then lets me start asking very specific questions. So, when does this pain come? How long does it last? What makes it better? What makes it worse? Whatever, right? And then after doing all of that, I then come up with a working diagnosis and I decide, okay, I'm going to start with this treatment, but it may not work. It doesn't work for everybody. So this is the thing we're going to talk about. This is the thing we're going to do. Come back in, a week or 2 weeks or a month. And I know sometimes people get really frustrated with medicine as a science, because the truth is, if you've ever looked at a degree, have my Bachelor of Arts and Science on the wall. It's an art and a science. We don't call it biology. It's really an art. Sometimes it's an art of the discussion, the information we get from you, the trial and error, and it's not always cut and dry, black and white, because everything that works for you doesn't necessarily work for another person. And so we have to be aware of that and understand that and recognize that you gotta be aware and be careful and be ready for us to have to massage the thing and figure out exactly what's going on. But just the middle, I think that was the hospital calling me, so I'm going to call them. I'll call them back in 20 minutes. But yeah, so you have to sometimes recognize that this is it is an art when it comes to sciences, and so we do have to try to identify these things and then move from there.
So let me ask you this question: because you're in bariatrics, how often do you see food or bariatrics as an issue that mentally affects folks?
Oh, all the time. I mean, I don't think that I've dealt with one person. I'm trying to think, other than someone who has a metabolic issue that, maybe it's thyroid, maybe it's, but there are very few people that when I actually am dealing with them for weight loss, there are very few people who there's not some emotional component, something, whether it's guilt, whether it's, finding them, I'm going to call them back in a minute. Whether it's, but there's always some emotion connected to it. And once I talk about it, once we tease it out and we point it out, they're often like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that. But we often will get them to a point where they can remember when they started doing it. At some point in their adolescence or some point as a child, you were talking about being given a diagnosis of having a disability. It's so funny because we've had this conversation. This is the second time, and you'll say cripple, and that is like so like that like we don't say that. We don't. It's funny. But having a disability, for us, we'll say a disability. But there was a time where people didn't even care about how they categorize people, right? So they're calling folks retarded. They're calling folks crippled. And that does something when you label me as a thing, and that thing has a stigma to it. I then began to think of myself as unable to do something. Or I began to think of myself as ill-equipped and I'm never going to learn. There are all kinds of stories about, people. I think Einstein, I don't know if it's a true story or not, but there's supposedly, he had a teacher, he took a test and he got a very low score on the test, but his mother told him that he scored so well on the test, he's a genius. The fact that his mother told him he's a genius really changed his whole mindset of what it was. But supposedly the story is he failed this test miserably, and the supposedly the teacher told his mom that he was quite deficient and he would never become anything. This was supposedly Einstein's story. I wrote about it in my book about how when you believe a certain thing about yourself,
yes,
it's truly going to affect how you perform. And so I get people when they come in for weight loss, sometimes the first thing they're doing is excusing themselves. Or my whole family is big. Yeah, so I don't expect to get too small. So you come in, I do their assessment, and really they need to lose maybe 100 pounds, quite frankly, to be healthy. But they only expect to lose, they want to lose maybe 40 because they have already made a decision in their mind that they're not going to get a lot smaller because their whole family is big.
Mhm.
And this has been for generations. And I'm looking at them going, this has nothing to do with what your ability is right now. You're just accepting in your mind that this may not happen for you, but that's not the case until you actually recognize, see it, and visualize it. You're going to constantly be in this place where you're going to lose 30, 40 pounds. And you're going to gain it back. And you're going to lose another 30, 40 pounds. And you're going to keep getting, and you're going to stay at this weight that you've already pre-decided. You made a decision ahead of time what you're probably going to lose. And so unless we break that cycle in your mind about where you can get to, what your capabilities are, it's going to be very difficult for me to help you do that because you don't see it for yourself. You don't believe it for yourself. And so I think that weight loss and bariatrics is completely connected to, I mean, hand in hand with our mental capacity, our emotions, our whether we're mentally healthy or mentally ill. That's where illness comes from. There's, mental health awareness. We got to know if we're healthy or not. And if you're not, what are some things you need to do to change it? And a lot of it is renewing your mind, truly believe it. We are believers, but we don't really believe what we say we believe. It's the craziest thing ever. We call ourselves believers. But the biggest folks I have the problems with is a believer that walks in telling me they only expect to lose, 40 pounds. And I'm thinking, okay, I know because we go to the same church that's not those aren't the teachings that we receive. So where is it in your mind that's stopping you from believing that you can truly do all things are possible? To those who believe, it's all things, not some things, not a part of it, not some of it, all things. But it's so it's just amazing that we have to have these conversations with believers. It's just amazing.
We have a question. Go ahead, sweetie.
We have a question for you that someone just sent.
Okay.
Do you think some alcoholics or drug addicts are only those things because they have been labeled, that they have been told and believe they are labeled?
So do I believe that they're alcoholics or drug addicts because someone told them that they're drug addicts?
Because they have been told that they were.
No, so that's some people. Here's the thing about alcohol and drugs. These are chemical dependencies. And that's where often the empathy and the compassion needs to be extended toward people. There is a physical, chemical dependence on this particular product, whatever it is, whether it's alcohol, whether it's heroin, whatever it is, right? The problem is we have treatments that can get you off of that chemical dependence. All right. So we can get you to the point where you no longer need it physically and physiologically and chemically. The problem is that doesn't change your mind. So I'm often in situations, because I also do drug addiction treatment at Bridging the Gap in Clinton. So I do these drug treatments, and I watch myself dealing with people, and I'm saying to them, I can show you right now in your bloodstream that you have very little even of the drug that we use to control it to get you down. So you're at a point now where we could take you off of everything. Their anxiety kicks in. They're afraid to be without anything because they're so convinced that they actually need it. That's the part we have to often work on, because it's not because they have been told they're alcoholic, but the problem is they really don't believe that they can do life without it. They really don't believe that they can be stressed and be disappointed and have stuff happen to them in the world and endure it and actually deal with it without this thing that's medicating them to keep, because they've been doing it for so long. So it's really a matter of getting them treatment for this anxiety. And really sometimes it's life skills. It's really trying to help them really understand that they have this, you have this, you can You don't think on a daily basis I'm not stressed as a regular normal person. People stress me out all the time, whether they cut in front of me in the traffic. It's going to happen all day long. The difference is, how do I respond or react to those stresses? My response and reaction to a stress is very different than somebody who gets so anxious and so angry or so whatever it is that they now need to medicate themselves so that they don't feel it, so that they don't respond. That's two different people. So we now need to work on, how do you go back? And sometimes, like I said, ACEs, things that happen very young in these people's lives where they never really learned how to deal with conflict. They never learn how to deal with disappointment. They never learn how, there's these things that if you don't know how to deal, how to handle those things, then your reaction is so over the top that you're constantly fighting with people, hurting, whatever it is you're doing. And sometimes you're using the substances to just stop you from feeling anything because you haven't learned how to actually work through your feelings. So
I was going to say that's what I admire so much about you, because you deal with adolescents, you deal with young people, and I talk about regularly about, I had a cousin named Tracy. When I was 3 or 4 years old, I wore those leg braces like the movie Forrest Gump, with the shoes with the wooden bottoms that you had to lock into. And so I always remember my mom used to let Tracy take me out, but he would take me around a corner and take my braces off my legs. And so as the other kids were playing, he'd say, "Go run." And I'll look at the kids running, but I was afraid to run because of the braces. But then he was like, so what are you going to do? Are you going to either stand here or are you going to go play? And so I remember taking a couple of steps, then stop, taking a couple of steps and then stop. And I would use that same principle as I was growing up and maturing and becoming an adult, because you're going to always have challenges. You're going to always have things that oppose you and come up against you. But I will always remember my cousin Tracy saying, "What are you going to do? Are you either going to sit here or are you going to get a part of this?" And so, and that's one of the things that I admire, because you're getting them while they're young. And if we can assist you while you're young, we can almost guarantee success when you get older.
But I also want people to never think it's too late, right? Never too late, because that's also, I think, a principle of mine. You want to get them while they're young. You want to make sure that they understand there's anything that's possible that they can do. But that renewing of the mind, I mean, Paul was well into, his adult life when he changed into the person that he became. Sometimes we actually believe that it's too late for something, and it's never too late. One of my favorite stories is about Colonel Sanders, Kentucky Fried Chicken, how he was really broke and was about to retire and realized he had no real money, and he had started making chicken, and he was actually giving them away to women who were, I think, home, the war had started. He was giving them away as dinners or whatever to some of these women. Anyway, they liked it and they wanted to know how they could get more of it. He made his fortune well into his, I think, 70s. Before he started and really made KFC this chain. So there's so many times when you think it's too late for me. I tried, I didn't make it, I didn't do this, I messed this whole thing up. And I think that we're not really trusting God when we do that. It's just like Sarah and Abraham, right? You believe that I'm so late that I'm so old, this ain't gonna happen. We really aren't giving God the ability to have the glory to really show out and change our situation, because it can happen in an instant. But we just have to be ready for it. We have to believe it. We have to be, faithful, and we just have to be ready for it. But I'm such a believer that it's just never too late. I think there are so many of us who walk around thinking that once we mess something up, that our time has passed and we're not going to be able to do anything. And I think there's just not enough people reading these stories and understanding. I love this kind of information. I hate history. It's funny. I grew up not liking history, but I like real life stories. And then next thing I knew, I'm like, oh, that's really history. Oh, okay. I guess I like history. But when you know about someone else, it's like, it's just another believer principle, right? When we know that God can do it for one person, we know he's no respecter of person. And we know if God to do it for this man or for this woman, why is he not going to do it for me? I just got to keep pushing and keep moving forward, keep believing, and, and be where I need to be for that opportunity to find me, because it will find you. But it's not if you just sit still and stop doing. It's not going to find you.
So do this for me. Take 2 minutes and talk about label changing. One of the viewers talked about being an alcoholic and then delivering from alcoholism, but having the title of an alcoholic. Can you address that?
Ooh. Yeah, so that's good. I mean, that's actually a good question. One of the reasons, and you talk to anybody who's an alcohol who has been an alcoholic in their life, they are convinced, and it is a part of the, I guess, treatment, to consider yourself an alcoholic for the rest of your life. And the reason they often do it, and I think there's 2 parts to it. And that's why I say it's hard to tease out, but there is a difference. There's the nuance is so small. The real reason for it is to always have in your mind that you are not like other people. You can't have a beer, a glass of wine, a half a glass of wine, a sip. You can't do what most people do, because your chemistry, this is why I always say it is a chemical reaction. It isn't just mind made up. That's only part of it. But there is a chemical reaction that occurs in an alcoholic and someone who has this chemical reaction that takes them over the top in how they respond to alcohol than another person. It just is. And so one of the reasons for always sort of holding on to the understanding that I'm an alcoholic is so that I don't forget what alcohol, the potential the potential damage alcohol can do to me. So I always have to be mindful of it. It doesn't mean that I will forever have this problem of alcoholism. That's just 2 different things, right? So always having alcoholism as a problem and always knowing that you're an alcoholic. So don't do certain, it's like I'm a Christian. There's certain things I'm just not going to do because I'm a Christian. Now, do I sometimes do those things? Yep. But that doesn't change me to not be a Christian. It means I fell off, just like with alcohol. You fall off the wagon. You fall off the wagon. So you have to remember and renew. Remember that this is a thing that I can't consume because my body responds and reacts in a particular way that is deadly or potentially harmful or whatever it is. And so that's the reason for keeping that sort of in the forefront, but not to walk around with like the scarlet letter A, alcoholic. That's not what it's for. It's for you to remind yourself, I can't play with alcohol. There's some cough syrups. I know people who have had alcoholism in the past. There's some cough syrups they won't take because the alcohol content is high. They're not going to touch it because they understand and they know that there is a chemical reaction that occurs. So that's the reason for that. Just like there are people I know growing up who decided to experiment with a drug and it never did anything to them. The other people experiment with a drug, next thing you know, they're strung out. That is a chemical reaction. And so you have to understand everybody's body. That's why I said even with medications. Medications have these long lists and labels of side effects. That doesn't happen to everybody. But it happens to the few people that it does. And the people that it happens to, they're not going to take it anymore. Our bodies are so different, that we have to be mindful that again, this is an art just like it's a science. So you can't assume, but that's what that labeling is about. It's not so much, like I said, a scarlet letter A, as a reminder that there is a chemical reaction that occurs that I want to avoid. And so it's like having a diabetic bracelet on. You know, there's certain things that people are going to do differently because I'm diabetic.
Listen, we're out of time.
Oh my God.
I know the hour goes fast.
But listen, I love this. We'll talk offline.
Alex, I want to end with this real quick. So remember, you said show me the book. So here's the book, right? So you can go to my website. What I love it. So there's a couple books. I showed you guys Soul Food Therapy last time, and this one is 10 Secrets to Lose Weight, Burn Fat, and Stop Food Cravings for Good. This has much of the other information, but it really is about ways that we eat that stop us from overeating, that cause us to burn fat, and that can help us lose weight. Food can be used to lose weight if we know what we're doing. So that's why it's really important to understand that. The website is, www.Dryolanda, MD, DRYOLANDA, MD.com. And the things about COVID, we'll talk about later, but I just want people to know, just as I said in our thing with the ministry, protect yourself with whatever you need to, washing your hands and sanitizing, exercise, because that boosts your immune system. You want to, eat right. That moves boosts your immune system. Activity and exercise boosts your immune system. The C is stay connected. And the E is really embrace this time. You want to embrace the space that you're in, find something different to do. As you were talking about, find what opportunities there are to grow, but don't just let this time take over you. You want to take over this time. So that's what I wanted to
listen, guys, we so thank God for Dr. Yolanda. I tell you, she's been just so awesome. Listen, if you're watching us or viewing us and you don't know Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior, now is the time. Ask him to come into your life, be Lord of your life, receive salvation right now. Listen, we thank you, Dr. Yolanda, for taking time out of your busy schedule. We know you're super busy, but we just believe that the world needed this information.
Absolutely. Again, guys, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. So, and that it doesn't end in May. We just want to bring some awareness about it. But this is something that's happening all year round. And because of COVID, again, we're unmasking some depression and some isolation and some anxiety and fears, but we don't have to be there. We don't have to live there. And as we're ministering to you all, we just have, may the peace of the Lord, all the beyond understanding, come over you, because we do have the information. My people perish for the lack of knowledge. That's why they're here, and we're here to give you as much information and knowledge, and then you have to use it. That's wisdom. Wisdom is applied information or applied knowledge. So you have to be wise and use this information.
And that is the foundation of In the Blender with Brandon and Madeline Hyman. My people perish for a lack of knowledge. We're just here to share knowledge that we've gotten over the years and knowledge from those that we have come into contact with over the years. So we thank you guys. We thank Dr. Yolanda for joining us on this evening. Listen, guys, we love you. And until next week, how can they reach us, y'all?
We are a blended family at gmail.com or our website, intheblenderministries.com. And also don't forget, this will replay on Thursday night, 8 to 9 p.m. on WJMS Radio. You can download the app, tune in, and add that to your favorites. We're also on, it'll be on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. So it's no excuse. You'll be able to hear this anytime.
As well as YouTube.
As well as YouTube, absolutely.
And so again, we thank you, Dr. Yolanda.
Thank you.
Love you.
Yes.
Love you.
And until next time, bye-bye.
Bye, guys.